paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Right now, it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio. Oh, golly, we're out there everywhere to be found. Now we've even got our Roku TV network up and running, so you can watch us on the Roku TV box if you happen to be a Roku member. And also, we've got a lot of great hosts broadcasting on the network. Mark Emery started his show just an hour ago on the network, and he'll be on every Wednesday now for quite a long time. Skunk Magazine's bringing their show to the network. We're going to have Skunk on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network a couple of times a week as well, starting in October. And we're going to be growing marijuana on the site. You can come to timeforhemp.com, and you can watch us put in a indoor garden from seed to harvest to smoke, and that'll be starting in a week or two as well. So we got a lot of things going at the timeforhemp.com website, so make it a point to stop by and always let our sponsors know that you heard about them here on the big broadcast and that you appreciate them being sponsors for keeping us loud, proud, and strong. It is Wednesday, and on Wednesday we celebrate all the amazing people at LEAP, normally, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Sometimes we step outside that box, but whatever we do, we always do it with our joint friend here on the Big Joint Broadcast. Don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint on the Big Joint Broadcast, 2.5 million people all around the world pack their bongs, their pipes, their vaporizers, and take time for hemp. Well, with that said, I'm going to pass this joint chat over to my joint host and our joint guest here on the Big Joint Broadcast while I smoke my joint here at Time for Hemp. Your Honor?
Casper, good morning. How are you? And I have a problem. I know the show's going to be smoking, as always, but what's this out-of-the-box stuff? That's not in my contract. We'll chat about that.
All right.
Today, we have where I'm thrilled. We have Sean McAllister, and that's an McAllister, and the Sean is an SEAN, Sean, because you want to be able to find this guy. Of course, you can find him on Time for Hemp. Sean is my brother by another mother. I love this man. I know him as a human. I know him as an activist. I know him as a criminal defense attorney, as a business marijuana attorney. And Sean, your current position, if you could fill us in just a bit. Again, that's SEAN and McAllister with 2 L's.
That's
Sean,
right. The MCA of pot, the Pontificate of pot, the Mayor of marijuana, the land shark lawyer of marijuana. Just like you, my brother Lenny, it is Sean T, the MC, Sean McAllister, coming to you from Denver, Colorado, giving a shout out to the marijuana world. You should definitely be hitting that joint, just like Casper said.
Sean, I can't until after the show. It's too much divided attention.
Right, you're right, and we're not driving. I mean, I think this conversation is going to be fun either way, but definitely for the listeners, it'll be more fun if they're imbibing. So thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
You're welcome. And in all fairness, I imbibed earlier to avoid the problem. You may know that I've also solved the problem of short-term memory, which is wait 15 minutes.
That's right. In Colorado, they say if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. And really, if I can't remember now, I probably will in 15 minutes. So it applies to either circumstance. But yes, Your Honor, how can I please the court today?
Mr. McAllister, it's always a pleasure to have you at the podium. You have been active in the politics, in the success of marijuana law in Colorado, which, oh, by the way, means in the rest of the world. And sometimes I think we don't see that. Are there any things that come to mind in terms of ways that you have reached out successfully or that listeners can take this next step?
Well, yeah, let me tell you my creation myth here. And it's not even a myth, it's a true story. And then I'll tell the listeners what's to be done out there. But 1996, geez, it seems so recent, but yet so long ago. What happens in 96? Well, I went to law school, and the same time, I went to the law school in August in Colorado of 96. At the same time, California legalizes medical marijuana in November of 96. One of my best friends in law school said, geez, I could either study this law thing and get myself into a box that I could never get out of, or I could quit law school, move to California, start a medical grow in Berkeley that developed into a 10,000 square foot grow in Oakland, and invite my friend Shawnee Mack out to the Bay Area. And so I had my own personal summers of love, 96, 97, 98 in the Bay Area with all the OGs, Debbie Goldsberry, Wayne Justman, Ed Rosenthal, all the legends in California were there. And it really ignited my fire. I'd gone to law school to be an environmental lawyer, but all of a sudden the world started changing, and California led the way. And what's been so fun is to see that it's like any other progress in life. One state steps forward, and another state leapfrogs them. And so Colorado's now gotten out in front with the legalization, and like you said, I've been a part of that, and so have you, Your Honor. I helped start Sensible Colorado in 2004. I did start it, which is the organization that incorporated SAFER and worked with SAFER to run all the campaigns in Colorado over the last 10 years that culminated in the legalization. And, what's fun about this movement is we're never finished. And so, like I said, we've been leapfrogging each other, and now is the time for California to bring it full circle for us and fully legalize in California. And I got to say, if I was an activist out there today, I love to surf, I love the weather in California, I would be living in either the Bay or Southern California somewhere, working my butt off to get this legalization right, because we've already seen some early signs that this California thing is going to be messy, it's going to be complicated. It could be contradictory with the 2016 elections, and there's tons of things for people to be doing. But, clearly getting involved in California, the industry is exploding. My gosh, there's more to do here than could ever be done. So there's plenty to be done, and we need more intelligent people to step into the movement. And so come one, come all.
Sean, two quick things. First, may I observe that you are, in fact, an environmental lawyer. You're improving the environment we live in.
That's right.
And that includes the air and the water, all of which we need to be paying attention to. And we are more and more. I loved, because we're on the leap hour, your use of leapfrogging. I thought...
That's right. Well, should I tell my honorary LEAP status story? This is kind of funny, really.
Absolutely, please.
Yes, I am a member of LEAP. I'm part of the Speakers Bureau, and I've had the honor to speak on behalf of it. And I never in my wildest dreams imagined I would be law enforcement, but a funny thing happened after law school. I worked for a year for friends, just doing my own thing, actually growing some fine weed in the mountains of Colorado, just west of Boulder, beyond the statute of limitations, by the way, and it happens to be legal now. But the source was out in California. I mean, we missed the days of pre-9/11 when I flew with a clone in my sleeve. And got marijuana back to Colorado. Those days are probably gone, but one of my first jobs was at the Attorney General's office in Colorado, and so I did do some environmental prosecution because I did did work in that field, the environmental field, for about 5 years before I came full-time to marijuana. And the bottom line is it shows you how far the movement's come, because in 2012, we could only get about 6 or 7 of us up on the podium as LEAP speakers to support the legalization of marijuana. Of course, you, Mr. Frieling, were there. I was there. But I sort of am an honorary LEAP member because, yes, I did prosecute companies, but luckily I've never had to put anybody in jail for marijuana, and I would never do that. Violates my deepest principles. So LEAP's a great organization. There's another one people can get involved in.
As you know, quitting as a judge was the best thing I ever did in terms of quitting anything, and qualifying me as a LEAP speaker as a former judge, absolutely the best benefit to that entire experience. It's a wonderful thing. The logic is so soundly based. It's so Republican an issue. People listen. They get it. We just need to get out there and tell them. Oh, on a shocking note, Google Alerts told me this morning, and I think this will surprise you, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie says that he has had in the state of New Jersey a medical marijuana program that he has supported, and I really wish he would call... I know, you can't make this up. I really wished he would call my brother in New Jersey who has psoriatic arthritis.
Right. I think his lap band surgery was a little too tight. It's cutting off the blood to his brain. I mean, what is this guy talking about?
I can't tell who my favorite Democrat of all time is. It may be Sarah Palin. It may be Chris Christie. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, they're terrible. I mean, that's part of the national scene. I mean, you've got these faux marijuana laws on the East Coast. I always say the West is the best, and it is true for marijuana because New Jersey's a joke, New York is a joke, the CBD laws in the South are a joke. It is funny, except it's also sad. And so, really the East Coast, come on, people. I grew up there in hot Atlanta, in that New South suburban Atlanta. And these people got to get it together because it is not working right now. And it's sad that those people on the East Coast are still under such ridiculous regimes.
Can we talk for a moment about why the CBD thing is a joke? And yes, that's a softball, but please, why is CBD a joke? This is one particular illness where we have terribly suffering babies.
No. I mean, the reason that it's a joke is because I've looked at, first of all, my firm with 6 lawyers, we're constantly looking beyond the state of Colorado. We're really going to focus probably on California, Colorado, and Florida. But we've looked at all the laws in all the states and tried to get an understanding of them. There's about 12 or 14 states that have CBD laws, and literally only 1 or 2 of them have any system for producing the CBD and selling it. You've got laws like Iowa that say you can possess it, but no one can produce it or sell it. So I guess in Iowa, the magic CBD fairy is supposed to grant you CBD out of the sky, and then you're legal to possess it. Same thing in southern states, Mississippi, Kentucky. There's government research projects that have been authorized. This is another in a long line of government sleight of hand where they say, hey, what's the problem? We took care of that. We passed that CBD law. But it's not a real CBD law when it says a university can research this and make a few conclusions and no one can really get it. Plus, the problem is some of these laws set arbitrary limits on the quantity of THC in the CBD. And so the bottom line is we know that CBD requires some THC to really be effectively activated. And the more THC there is, it doesn't have to be a lot, but there should be some percentage of it. It really increases the efficacy. I've been told, with THC and CBD together, the seizures can be controlled in 90% of the cases. With only CBD by itself, you might affect 30% of the cases. So, we're talking about these artificial limits that the boogeyman of THC is going to come get you, and your seizures are going to continue in those kind of states, and you're not going to have anywhere to get it, and no one's going to be lawfully authorized to produce it. I mean, it's just infuriating that we get these paper tigers on the East Coast and politicians hold up their hands and say we did something. It really is sort of shameful, but it is progress, and we should be pushing farther. It's an opening, but it is certainly not enough.
What jumps out at me is this. Picture the head of the FDA coming out and saying, we have decided to be compassionate. From now on, we are only going to approve drugs that are for seizures of a specific type and only for children. So no drugs will be permitted for cancer treatment. No drugs will be permitted for other diseases, but we're compassionate. We have a medical program. And as long as you're one of 6 people in the state, maybe we can save your life. But if you're all the other people, frankly, screw you all. And what do you say to that?
Circling back to that law enforcement against prohibition thing that you and I share together, this is really what our debate is stuck on, is 50-year-old prohibitionist mentality. Marijuana's evil. Like I said, any small percentage of marijuana is going to hurt you, going to kill you. It's addictive. I think the challenge for all of us is to get to know our local law enforcement and to be respectful and to change their minds, because right now, they sit down at the table like the 800-pound gorilla and tilt everything in favor of highly limited, highly law enforcement approach. I mean, I could tell you in every state, but especially Colorado, marijuana is still regulated with a criminal law enforcement mentality. It is not regulated like a business. My complaint about Colorado's regulators is the heads of these agencies have guns on their hips. They're former law enforcement, and they don't understand the needs of a business and the need to have investment and the need to have rules that are clear to encourage investment and the need to have rules that don't lead to criminal prosecution. And so, the explosion of regulated marijuana has been largely dictated by law enforcement, and that's why we get these ridiculous rules that you have to weigh the waste. I mean, we're under camera anyways, but somehow it matters whether the waste is 6 ounces or 5 ounces. And you just spend all this time in the regulation side doing things that don't protect public safety, that cause businesses to spend a lot of money, and at the end of the day, just represent that law enforcement approach to regulating marijuana. I mean, like I say, I think we regulate marijuana not like alcohol, but like plutonium. And so that mentality is really trying to strangle the industry. This is the backdoor execution that the law enforcement mentality is trying to do to marijuana. And we've got to resist that. We've got to demand business-oriented regulators that don't come and try to lock up our business owners, but work with them to build a successful industry. So the challenge is for guys like you and I to reach out to our law enforcement friends and for activists out there to really change the mentality of these law enforcement people. And I think that requires sophisticated lobbying techniques, sophisticated personal interactions, and taking it back away from that jocks versus geeks thing that I think we have in the marijuana world, where it's us against them, and really try to work to educate these law enforcement people, because right now they really are running the game as far as regulations, and it hurts us. It kills us.
Well, you can't do that without a good podium to speak from, and you can't have a good podium to speak from if you don't finance it. So that's what we're going to do right here, is we're going to finance this podium so we can keep raising our voice and letting the world know how important it is to take time for hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Waking back in the morning, waking back in the afternoon, waking back in the nighttime, every time is alright, it's alright. 7 a.m. call him on the telephone, said I'm coming home, son, it's time for us to roll, and I'm on the way to school with nothing to do, thought I roll another blunt to smoking with you, got the windows down with the Cali reggae loud, hit the stop, got the 20 spinning round, roll it tight so it burns real slow, I got the SOB dropping the baseline low, so move. I must be at school, coming, sneaking out the back to smoke with you. It was me and Mary Jane in homeroom class. I caught a smell of sweet aroma as she blew on past. Well, jaw dropping as my lip turns black. If I could stop to pay attention, wouldn't have to come back. I could hit the food and smoke my days away until the sun drops down and it's time to play. Waking back in the morning, waking back in the afternoon, waking back in the nighttime, every time is alright, it's alright. Waking back in the morning, waking back in the afternoon, waking back in the nighttime, every time is alright, it's alright. Of the earth, how they like to lurk and hide. The only way to get safe home tonight is to run and hide. Well, it's midnight. All the creatures of the earth, how they like to lurk and hide. The only way to get safe home tonight is to run and hide. Waking back in the morning, waking back in the afternoon, waking back in the nighttime, every time is alright. It's alright. Waking back in the morning, waking back in the afternoon, waking back in the nighttime, every time it's alright, it's alright. Waking back in the nighttime, every time is alright, it's alright.
You've been listening to Sons of the Beach singing Wake and Bake, which I do. I roll out of bed and I wake and bake. First thing I do when I wake up in the morning is get myself a big old cup of Joe. And then Joe gets dressed and goes to work, and then I get myself a cup of coffee and pack myself a bowl and get busy in front of my computer. And then I wake and bake all day long. With that said, I pass this joint chat back to my joint host and our joint guest here on the Big Joint Broadcast for your joint entertainment. Your Honor?
Gents, do you realize that before most of our listeners were born, a guy named Chubby Checker had a song out called Twist and Shout. And then people thought twist was a dance.
Yep.
They'd great. It's not the twist he was talking about. He was talking about twist one up and shout.
Wow.
Along the same lines, I think that in honor of Governor Christie, and I'm going to tell you in a second what a positive thing they have done, I think we need one of our grower friends to have a new strain called Chronic Chris. I just think he's earned that honor. Think about the positive side. We know that legalizing CBDs for seizures does not make for a medical marijuana solution. But think about the headlines. When they say 24 states have legal medical marijuana, that's all people hear. New Jersey gets counted. It's at least on the list. It helps the momentum. People read the headlines. They don't read the second paragraph. As far as the addiction issue, I also find I'm addicted to sleep and to eating. I really don't like going without those either. Sean, let's jump over to some of the problems. On the one hand, as you know, if somebody jumps off a roof and sadly dies or commits a homicide, and, oh, by the way, the toxicology locates THC in the system, the first thing that is known absolutely for sure is that the THC caused the behavior. It occurred to me, same line of reasoning, that the absolute leading cause of death is birth.
Okay. Well, I mean, you asking me to talk about the sensationalization by the media of isolated events?
Well, no, but now it sounds more and more like Planned Parenthood has a solution for death, and we're trying to shut down its funding. I don't get that.
Sean, where I'd like to go is to address some of the things that for real are issues, not hysteria. And I'm thinking like things like concerns over driving, concerns over cleanliness, pesticides, the purposes of regulation, some of the issues which are not just hysteria, but are things that shouldn't be ignored.
Yeah, so as you know, I've been on the forefront of this DUID marijuana debate for the last several years here in Colorado, and I've had the chance to speak around the country about it a little bit too. I mean, you know, this is a perfect example of we're always going to be beholden to the paranoid people who say, geez, what about the children? What about the DUIDs? People will be driving high. They'll be neglecting their children. And, you know, what we know from real science is that marijuana use, you shouldn't be high driving. But at the same time, it's not the same as alcohol. The studies show that most people under normal conditions do actually drive fine. They don't have any significant impairment. And a lot of the tests that did show impairment, they do just test you on these computer screens and say, okay, when this picture comes up, touch the red button. When this one comes up, touch the blue button. And there's not really a correlation between how fast you can touch the red or blue button to whether or not you can function and drive a car. But with that being said, no responsible advocate says go out there and drive high. I've always advocated after they smoke, and really they don't have to wait that long. They have to wait maybe an hour. That's what most scientists would say is that, you know, significant impairment lasts about the first hour, and then it drops off really quickly. But instead, we get a response from the legal system that says, if you have 3 or 4 or 5 nanograms of marijuana, a nanogram is 0.000. There's 9 zeros after the point before you get to a nanogram. We are talking about infinitesimally small numbers here that the law has said if you have around 5 nanograms in Colorado and Washington, other states are looking at this like California, that you're presumed high. And, the problem with this, it's a knee-jerk reaction from the system. Well, we got to crack down on these high drivers. What we know is the best evidence of whether or not you're high is roadside performance tests. Of course, the problem is our current tests were designed for alcohol, not for marijuana, so we need to change those tests. But that's what activists legitimately focus on and say, if you really want to get at this, let's change those tests, let's do that. But instead, the system, they want a breath test like we have for alcohol, so they've gone to this 5 nanograms. I mean, the science keeps coming and coming to show that 5 nanograms does not mean you're high for a regular user. Maybe for somebody who never smokes, it would be unusual for them to have 5 nanograms. But this study out of Australia from the last few months says people have 7 nanograms, 10 nanograms in their system 3-4 days after use. And we have done in my office, defending people, we've done tests. We've let them smoke marijuana at the hour when we began the tests, and then tested them every hour for 8 following hours. Every expert in the world says smoked marijuana, you should not be impaired 1 to 4 hours after you use it. Well, we found guys with 15 nanograms 8 hours after they use it. I mean, this is only in marijuana, the Lewis Carroll, down the rabbit hole, George Orwellian mentality that we got one number and it's got to mean what we think it means. And the facts are that innocent people are being pushed into plea deals because of these stupid limits. And at the end of the day, we have seen a decrease in traffic fatalities in the last several years in Colorado. It kind of goes up and down, but the overall trend has been down. And if you talk to professionals, they'll tell you it's because the roads are better engineered, the cars are better the point here is that there is no correlation between legalization and increase in traffic fatalities, but we do have a lot more DUIDs in this state, and that's something that defense attorneys like myself are having to deal with day in and day out, and lots of soccer moms and regular plain old stoners are out there getting probably wrongfully pushed into plea deals or convicted, and that's a big problem.
Sean, there are 2 different directions that I see in this. One of them, yesterday I read, right now, Colorado is at the lowest fatal accident rate ever. Mm-hmm. Not highest, lowest. Do they find pot in people's blood and fatals? Yeah, they do. Of course, they weren't looking for it in the past. But
sure,
just to not be misleading to our imbibers, I personally did an experiment with an expert driving instructor, a driving simulator in which I learned this module of the course straight, then went out into the parking lot and ingested a massive dosage, and specifically Volcano, 2 1/2 full bags of Agent Orange in a Volcano. I literally couldn't inhale any more vapor. I was trashed. And trust me, my driving was impaired as hell. I went to, I can do this, to spinning out, going over curbs. So if we take it to an extreme, speaking only for one human on the planet, I don't think people are wise in assuming it cannot be impairing. For me personally, my maximum impairment was at 90 minutes, and at 2 hours, I was back to baseline, and at 2 hours, the instructor said, okay, now I would be a passenger in your car, but slow down. Right. What about, in Colorado, there's a lot of regulatory structure.
Yeah.
What kinds of things are they paying attention to? Good things, bad things? What are we dealing with here?
Yeah, well, you brought up pesticides earlier. I mean, I've got 15 issues I could talk to you about the regulatory side, but this is an important issue for consumers and for businesses. I was part of the litigation this spring with the city of Denver when they came in on sort of anonymous tips to about 60 grows in Denver, and they ended up shutting down 11 of them based on some pesticide use, and I represented 4 of those 11 in that enforcement process. And we got good outcomes at the end of the day, but man, let me tell you the brain damage we had to go through. And it is ironic. I am an environmentalist, and I prefer and want organic marijuana or marijuana that has no significant residues of any pesticide that could ever hurt me. So again, Lewis Carroll, George Orwell reality here. What's the system we have in America? We have an EPA that regulates pesticides that, of course, won't analyze pesticides on marijuana because it remains federally illegal. And so growers were left in a position of saying, well, what do we know? What can we put on these plants? And most of them brought their knowledge from back in the black market days or the gray market days of medical marijuana before dispensaries. And they would go to their greenhouses or their nursery stores and say, how do I control fungus? Oh, well, fungus, is a very bad thing. If you have fungus in your marijuana, it will cause cancer if you regularly smoke that over a long period of time. So growers want to be responsible, and these people, they ask other growers, and nurseries would say, well, try Eagle 20. Eagle 20 is a product designed for backyard cultivation of fruits and stone fruits, plums, those type things. So it is an approved product by EPA in a certain context for non-commercial, outdoor use. And these growers took this and applied it to their indoor grows. And guess what? They got rid of the fungus. They reduced the risk to their client. But there was a small residue of this antifungal on their marijuana, and Denver went crazy. And I think the bottom line of this issue is that we need full risk assessments and we need standards. But right now, all the states are just making it up. So you've got states like Nevada have set a 0.1 part per million across the board standard that has nothing to do with science. I mean, what's great about this job, and you probably feel it too, Lenny, because you're a marijuana lawyer, that you get to learn so many interesting things. Marijuana is in the same genus as hops. And that's great. That family, what a party. I mean, I want hops, I want marijuana. I'm telling you, that's my favorite genus of plant. And the bottom line is that hops, for example, can take up to 9 parts per million of certain ones of these fungicides. And Nevada would say, no, 0.1 part per million across the board. I think Oregon has a 1 part per million across the board standard. A lot of states are saying unless it's approved by the EPA, it can't be on there. So, we really are caught in this bizarre world where we want to have safe products, but the regulators won't test it and tell us whether it's safe or not. Now, there's a opportunity with EPA to go through a special review process to maybe look at this issue, but I think it's going to take 2 more years. In the meantime, people are trying to use just the most non-toxic things, neem oil, these things that don't even register or don't even need EPA registration. But the problem with that is, again, what I see is what's going to happen. Owners will get in a tough spot because they don't have the chemicals they want to control fungicide. And if it's a choice between killing the whole grow or spraying a little pesticide on it, they're probably going to try to, get away with it. And right now there is no pesticide testing. So it's really a bad situation for everybody. It's bad for consumers. It's bad for dispensaries. But the odd thing is consumers are not really demanding organic marijuana. I mean, I want it. I think people should want it. But if you ask dispensaries, what's the number one issue? They all say price. People just come in and say, I want it. I want good quality, good price. And nobody's asking about organic. So we're in the middle of a sea change here with how we grow marijuana and what we put on it. But I hope consumers will become more educated and start asking those hard questions. Because right now, I think I've seen dispensaries in Denver that used to advertise organic cannabis. They've taken the word organic off because it's just not worth it to them. They don't see it value added. And they're just, putting out stuff right now that doesn't really have a lot of standards behind it. And I think business owners are trying to do the right thing. And part of what we showed in that Denver case is all that stuff I told you about residual pesticides. You could have smoked 4,000 joints of my client's marijuana and still been at the safe level under EPA rules for analogous crops like hops. And yet still local regulators are shutting people down over pesticide stuff. So it doesn't even matter if we show them it's safe. I mean, if that had been a McDonald's and they thought the burgers were contaminated, but we showed them science saying it was safe, they would have lifted the hold. In our case, they made us get down below this almost non-detectable level and eventually did release most of that marijuana. But that's a huge issue. It goes back to sustainability. Like you said, I'm an environmentalist. We need to be thinking about these issues in the industry, how our carbon footprint with all this electricity use affects our communities. I think Boulder's tried to address that, but not in a great way. I mean, these are issues that will have to be reckoned with, because really at the end of the day, marijuana, if at all possible, should be grown under the sun in an organic manner, and we're all going to be happy and have a good time.
Well, we're all going to be happy and have a good time if our bills are paid, and that can't happen unless we stop and take a break and let our sponsors be heard, which we're going to do right now here at Time for Hemp.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Yeah, stay alert with consciousness and keep in mind this does grow from the earth. I never could figure out how we've waged a war against something that can't move. It sways in the wind and it can be picked up by humans and transported, but it doesn't like pull its little roots out of the ground and chase you down the street screaming at you with a knife in its hand. And it's not the kind of plant like poison ivy that if you tumble into it, you're itchy for a year. And it's not the kind of plant that if you should happen to ingest it by accident, you die. In fact, you get healthier, which is why I can only conclude that it was morons in some sort of political position that decided that this plant should be outlawed. Just saying. With that said, I pass this joint chat back to my joint host and our joint guest for the last joint session of this segment. Your Honor?
Casper, Sean, I suggest we keep rolling along here. It seems to me that while 4,000 joints might be sufficient for Ed Rosenthal and might be okay for pesticides, I wouldn't recommend 4,000 joints and then driving.
Right.
Well, it depends on how big they are, but no.
Well, okay. we
It's
did
like cheats.
we were
How many
exposed
joints in a lid?
about
One, man.
It is about 30, I know, because for a party I rolled up an entire ounce once, and it was 30 joints. It occurs to me that in the free state of Colorado, with absolutely some of the finest microbreweries in the country, some of the big boy beer companies, the cannabis skills, the laws, I think the free state of Colorado may now be the hops center of the world. We're hopping.
We're hopping in. That's right.
We're hopping in.
Well, it is. Look, let me tell you what Colorado makes it special here. It's a confluence of people that come together because they have like-minded mentality. They're outdoors oriented. They want to be in nature. They want to smoke a little weed in nature, ski and smoke a little weed. They're highly libertarian. A third of the electorate is an independent. So, I really was blessed to move here in 1996, like I said, when California legalized, and we just took that momentum to another level. But it's going to happen across the whole West and eventually across the United States, because people understand that this war was lost long ago and didn't achieve anything other than criminalizing youth and filling our prisons and wasting our tax dollars. So it's really exciting where the country's headed.
Are you suggesting that regulation might be a good idea and that we're making progress?
Well, careful what you ask for. I can never forget one of my favorite marijuana entrepreneurs who struggled through 5 years of this burgeoning industry with changing rules every other week, who said, if anybody wants to ruin their credit and go bankrupt, I recommend they go into the marijuana industry, because, right now we're all guinea pigs for a regulatory system that changes the rules on us and enforces them before we're told about it. And it's really a very difficult thing. There's a lot of myth about the marijuana millionaire, but the reality is there's a lot of people working hard just to get to square one. And so, I think people need to be sober about it, because regulation is definitely a devil. I mean, you're going to have to deal with a lot of BS out there, but I think we're trying to do it the responsible way here and in several other states, and that is ultimately the industry will mature and be in a place where people can make money in it.
As you know from your California background, everyone knows how you make a small fortune. You take a big fortune, you buy a vineyard in Napa.
Exactly. Well, look, I mean, it's exciting. It's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry right now. I think $3 or $4 billion now, and the projections are it's going to go to $10 billion. And so there is a lot of consumption out there that needs to be captured into the system. But dumb laws across the country that make the price so high because the regulations are so burdensome, all that does is ensure that people will stay on the black market. And I'm thinking of Minnesota, where they opened up dispensaries and nobody came because it is $500 an ounce in Minnesota. Of course, you can't have flour in Minnesota. You can only have oils, but it's so expensive and you can't get flour that people say, what do I care? I'm going to go to my same local black market dealer. Same thing in Illinois. They threw a party and nobody came. There's only 3,000 patients in Illinois. People spent tens to hundreds of millions of dollars collectively to build out dozens of dispensaries, and no one came because the conditions are limited so severely that there's nobody who qualifies, and doctors won't write the recommendations or prescriptions. So, this regulation model is good and it's important, but if it's so restrictive, all it's going to do is ensure the black market continues. It's not going to raise tax revenue, and we've got to change that. We need good regulation, smart regulation, not just tough regulation.
Is perhaps pesticides one of the areas where regulation makes sense?
Oh, sure. I mean, again, I think it's important from a consumer safety. That's not the part that upsets me, because, again, we all want safe marijuana. We want to know what's in it, just like you want to know what's in a can of Coca-Cola or some other product. You see all the ingredients on it. You should have, consumers be educated and make sure that they're not ingesting something that's harmful to them. But, again, it's back to these core issues around the country where you have New York that has non-flower tinctures only and oils only. I mean, New York, it's ridiculous. In New York City, there are hundreds of marijuana delivery services advertising on Craigslist. So many that the cops can't even keep track of it. I could call and get marijuana in 10 minutes in New York through one of these ads. Why would I go to one of the 20 total dispensaries for the whole state, which probably means maybe one or two in Manhattan? And why would I go there and not be able to get flour to roll a joint? I mean, these rules are being set in a way that will ensure the failure of the system. The hope is that they see this and they expand the system later. But it really has me worried, like I said, about the East Coast states. I mean, Connecticut has a system where the growers have basically a monopoly. There's 8 growers who have licenses. And what do? They set the price. They realize the black market price is about $3.50 an ounce in Connecticut. So they charge the dispensaries maybe $300 an ounce, and the dispensaries get a little margin there where they make $25 an ounce. And the whole point here is you have a cartel in Connecticut. You're going to have a cartel in New York. You're going to have a cartel in Ohio where they're only going to give 5 licenses. I mean, these East Coast and Midwest laws that are monopolizing the industry in a highly restricted way are just doomed for failure. And, again, I hope it is an opening to more positive rules, but the regulation stuff around the country is really frightening if you look at it. It's certainly not business-oriented.
Let me back into a serious area with the lighter side of it. Staying up in a motel within the statute of limitations, so I'm not going to tell you what county it was in, and I committed petty theft. There was a little plastic sign in a motel room, those little plastic things with the cigarette and the circle with the line through it, no cigarettes. Well, this one had no cigarettes, and next to it, the same symbol over a marijuana leaf. I had to have it. I was standing at another motel, and a guest came up to the front desk and said, well, I bought my legal out-of-state pot. Where can I go smoke it? And the desk clerk said, I don't know. The question, of course, is, I'm lucky. I have a living room. I have a backyard. What about people who are renters? What about when I go to Durango? What about our Canna tourists who we really want to come to Colorado and buy pot, enjoy pot responsibly? But what are we doing? Where do we need to be going to give them a place, give me a place to legally consume, whether it's vape or smoke?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the issue at the forefront of a lot of our minds here. As you said, you come to Colorado, and the law is that hotels are allowed to provide a certain percentage of their rooms as smoking rooms under Colorado state law. It's the Colorado Indoor Air Quality Act. So there are hotels in the state that tolerate and allow marijuana smoking. But, these are none of the big national chains you would know, because the national chains, of course, worry about liability. They have hotels in other states. So it's mostly small bed and breakfasts that tolerate this or allow it. So that is allowed, but you'd have to find the right hotel. And then otherwise, we do have record tourism in Colorado, record tax dollars, more tax dollars from marijuana than we have from alcohol, which is an amazing stat. But at the end of the day, where do all these tourists use it? They're out in alleyways and outside. We've done some progressive things. Now, Denver passed a rule that said, first of all, you can smoke on your own property. And not only that, you can smoke on the front porch, you can smoke on the back porch, and anybody at your house, if you give them permission, they can smoke there too, even if that bothers a neighbor. I mean, ultimately that's a property right. You can do that. So that's good news. If people come here, they're at a friend's house, and the friend authorizes them, absolutely they can smoke front door, back door, front porch, back porch. That has not been adopted by many other places, and I think you still see this, sort of huddled mentality that you have to hide the marijuana. And that's why we talked in Denver about an initiative that would more explicitly authorize businesses to allow marijuana smoking on site. unfortunately, the group of people that put that together decided to yank it at the end of the day. I think that kind of upset some activists, because I've definitely had some big name endorsement type people. Like, if I said the name, you would know it right away. Some big names in the marijuana industry who want to come here, open up kind of a house of blues for marijuana where people can smoke on site. There's a lot of interest in that kind of a model, like the Amsterdam model. But, I think we have a lot of barriers for that. We're not Amsterdam. We're not a small, tiny little city where everybody walks and bikes and takes public transit. Most of the West, people drive or take, are in cars, and that worries policymakers. So I think we're going to come up with a compromise in the next year or two. But, the clear solution is to allow business owners to make that selection. They're already allowing this. If you call it a private event and have a ticket, then it's not a public event and everybody can smoke. But, technically you can't smoke in public places right now. So we're slowly solving that problem, but the long-term solution is social clubs. And there are social clubs around Colorado. There's some in Colorado Springs and Nederland, and I think more and more of those will pop up. It's really the state has left that to local regulation, and I think that's probably how it'll be in other states as well. So that's important. By the way, you mentioned and I'll just shut up, but the issue of leasing or renting a place. I mean, you've got a good joke about this, but I mean, basically, these landlords have decided to be the personal prohibitionists and keep marijuana out of all their places. And I've got people who are kicked out of Section 8 housing because they smoked a joint, who get evicted from their apartment because they didn't realize the lease said they couldn't do it. And unfortunately, that is legal under the Colorado Constitution, which says landlords and landowners can prohibit it on their property. So people need to be really smart about what's in their leases and not just sign every lease. And if marijuana smoking is important enough to you, you need to either renegotiate that lease or go live somewhere else. And that's just another weird thing about we're not really regulated like alcohol yet. We're regulated like something different.
Well, Father Time is evicting us from this program. We have to wrap it up. So we're down to the last minute or so. This gives you an opportunity to give a shout out to your favorite URL or activist organization you want to spotlight. And we'll start with our joint guest here on the Big Joint broadcast. Sean?
Well, of course, McAllisterLawOffice.com for all your regulatory criminal defense needs. But I support Drug Policy Alliance, drugpolicy.org, and Marijuana Policy Project, and normal.org. Those are some of the leading organizations, and I encourage people to get involved.
And Your Honor?
My pleasure to make sure that people know it is SEAN, Sean, and McAllister with 2 L's, a name you want to know. I want to give a shout out to mycanaryapp.com. Personal project on being selfish and taking advantage of my seat. mycanaryapp.com will help people make responsible decisions by looking at their actual performance, not meaningless blood chemistry. Thanks, Casper.
And I want to remind people that we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, broadcasting all about cannabis all the time and the need to end prohibition. We have wonderful guests on the network, as well as fantastic hosts and wonderful music. Every other hour is music. Every other hour is talk. And like a good joint, Time for Hemp is always best when you share us with your friends.